All right, we are live.
Hello, everyone in YouTube land.
Oh, you know what we need to do is I need to get Audible up.
A what?
Audition.
Got it.
Yeah, there
Yep.
we go. I knew I was forgetting something. You were saying hello, everyone out there. There's no one out there yet.
No, but there's going to be, in my mind,
Yeah,
there is one person listening on YouTube, so that's
so
fine. It's good enough.
yeah, but as the host here, I can see the zero for the number of people watching.
Yeah, that's cool. There's
Yeah.
imaginary people watching. So,
I didn't promote that we were doing this. I mean, it's on the website in the show notes from the last show, but
yeah, I just tweeted about 20 minutes ago that we were recording, so someone may see that. Who knows? Um, so we could go through the list if you'd like.
yeah, let's do that. Hang on. Okay. So I will do the initial welcome. Oh, you're not wearing your Plantronics.
No, I forgot actually,
Oh,
and
okay.
I've got a new setup here where I don't want to plug in something new. But to be honest, I've lost my amour over this thing. Really, it's nice, but it's a real faff trying to get this thing usable one every time I do a call. So I'm probably
Oh,
going to send it. It's an Amazon deal, so I'll send it back and get a refund. I'll just tell
yeah.
it,
Okay. All right. So anyway, I will do the hi everybody and welcome to episode 210. Um, Now, actually, I do hi. This is Shel Holtz in Concord, California. Then you do, and welcome to episode 210. That's the way that
do I?
works. Yeah.
Okay. So I do the
Uh,
intro.
yes, I'll start. I'll go hi everybody. This is Shel Holtz in Concord, California,
Okay. Then
and
I'll
then
do
you take
me
it from
and
there.
say welcome to 210, and we have a chit chat of
Yep.
whatever.
Okay, I'm going to mention that the the new Circle of Fellows will be up by Monday. It was very interesting. It was a different, whole different thing. It was Brad Whitworth and Mark Schumann sort of updating what they did at the IABC conference. So that was
Okay.
fun.
So why don't we swap this around? Let me start and say this is
Well, you
episode
did that
210.
last week. I try to alternate every month.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
I just think it seems a bit clumsy that then it goes to you to talk about
Well, we'll get to
Circle of
that. I mean, I'll
Fellows.
get to Circle of Fellows after we chit chat for a sec.
Okay.
All right. I got the polite mail promo, and then I will let you kick off the metaverse.
Yeah, it is. I am going to kick it off. I'm going to intro it, and I'm not going to talk in any detail about a lot of the things. I'm going to use the Wikipedia definition. I'm going to use the World Economic Forum article. I'm going to use the Financial Times piece, and a couple of mentions of CNN and this guy who wrote this really interesting piece about Second Life as a precursor to a metaverse. And that's the intro. So then we can discuss all the details, particularly the links you've got, whatever depth you want to go into. So I'll just riff from what you're saying on those things. I've got no specifics in there that I want to mention really, because to me it's like the intro to me is the interesting thing to debate, because this is just a concept. And then I hear others say, no, it's not. It's more, okay, it's more the concept because people are using it already. That's not a metaverse. And therein lies the argument, if you will.
Right. There is no
So
metaverse yet.
many people argue there is a metaverse now. And
Yeah.
I see some people, I've seen them on LinkedIn talking about they've built a metaverse. God, it's a bandwagon. Get off the bloody bandwagon. It's not there yet. So, but we'll have a chit chat. It's going to be
That,
quite interesting.
it'll be
So the
good.
intro, I've got it prepared already. So, and I'm probably going to convert this into a blog post actually. But this is about a page and a half, so this is probably about 8 minutes or so.
Okay, great. And then I have several things to talk about, but I'll roll them out one at a time, and we can talk about them together
Sure.
rather than me sit here and lather on.
Well, that wouldn't be much fun, would it?
Uh, Not for you.
No, not for me. God, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Then after that, I'm going to jump into an NFT update.
I listened to that clip you sent. That's super good. I have to say, it
Yeah,
really
the
is.
whole segment from Saturday Night Live was Kate McKinnon as Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary and former chair of the Federal Reserve Bank, talking to like a high school class, and everybody's trying to explain it, and they're all doing it to music, but they're not getting it right. And then she sees the janitor go by, and she says, "You with the broom," and he's the one who gets it right. So,
Excellent, excellent.
but the whole thing was motivated by Shelley Palmer's post about the state of NFTs, and I was not aware of a lot of what's going on.
Okay.
But the key thing is that sales of NFTs have topped $2.5 billion.
Okay.
So, my initial read on them, and I think you shared this, if I remember our early discussion on NFTs, was they were a short-lived trend that was riding high at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't think that anymore.
I did see a post, I forgot where I saw it, probably Facebook, from Chris Penn, saying he's got his first NFT and
he still doesn't
get it. Yeah,
doesn't get it.
yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Dan. Hang on, let me drop him a note. We're recording. Report coming? Okay. Yeah, I saw that too. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on that I just wasn't aware of. So I did a little research and I put this little report together, and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Then I assume Dan's going to have a report.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
We just won't be able to talk about what was in it because we haven't seen his little outline yet.
We'll just stick it in there.
Yeah. And then I read your post on anger, hostility, and outrage.
Yeah, I mean, that was prompted, as you saw, by the book I started reading, and then this Yale University report, which was really very, very interesting. But it's been something I've been tootling around with in my brain for the last 6 months. Why are people so revolting online? And what I see here in the UK is the kind of stoker, if you will, like putting more coals in the fire, are primarily the tabloid mainstream media. So they will take something and stick it on a front page headline about some grotesque behavior by some celebrity, or even funnier by a politician. And by the way, some of these things are funny, but they create awareness that otherwise would not exist, and people pile in and they report more of it. So there was that element to it, and that was a main part of Charles Arthur's book, which is a good read. It's well researched, and he's a good writer.
Have you finished it?
30%. So I'm at Kindle edition. So it was 20% when the 20% is a good place to be, because that was a kind of preamble getting to the point, the history of it all. And I was kind of nodding every page, because this is not a new phenomenon at all, the ugliness of behaviors. Kind of lemming-like in many ways. It's a bit like you see when there's crowds. Best example, I see it almost daily if I go into a city somewhere, which isn't that often these days, where you've got a car park with not many spaces and more cars trying to find spaces. The arguing, the horn hooting, the shouting, the ugliness. So that was part of it. But the Yale one is really interesting. They kind of got the proof. And this is then the second part of Charles Arthur's book, which is really talking about the algorithms, how they manipulate people. And he's got a big thing about Facebook. So I haven't read that section yet. I read some of the reviews, and they're really good. So he deserves a lot of visibility for the book. I think it's very timely. Topic is very timely, which I cross-posted my post on LinkedIn, and that got the attention of Johnny Moore, who's a guy I've known for about 10 years.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, he's an acquaintance more than a friend, but he's a kind of a lifestyle coach. Actually, that's probably misdescribing him entirely, but business coach and a mentor. And so he proposed doing this chat, and I'm happy. Fine, I'm happy for him to organise it, which he is, and we'll get together. As he says, unhurried conversation. That's like a type of discussion that he does a lot of those. So we'll do that on 1st September. I see there's already been quite a bit of interest in the Eventbrite page, so we'll continue that conversation. So I said I'd mention that on the show, definitely, because it's part of the thing, which I am.
Yeah, definitely do. And if there's a link to the Eventbrite page, send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes.
Well, I did. So you've got it in the.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think. Well, I sent it to you anyway. So you've got that. But it's a good topic, and I'm keen to know what you think about it. Not so much.
I do see it. Okay.
Yeah, not so much the where do we go from here, which is more of a metaphorical question. I hear lots of people talking about, why do we let them use social media? We got to stop this. And that's not an answer. even worse not is governments trying to regulate it all, because these are behaviours, and we got to change people's behaviours somehow. Anyway, let's wait for the show when we're recording to have the conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'll bring this up when we talk about it, but I see it manifesting itself also in behavior on airlines all of a sudden.
So all of it, I mean, all that stuff. I mean, I think I've mentioned that. I posted a tweet the other day, funny enough, on another survey I saw that was about passenger behaviour on airline. And the excuses I'm hearing from some people about, well, they're not used to travelling. They've been in lockdown for a year and a half. That no goddamn excuse at all. Serious people saying stuff like that. That's not it. There's just some people are just downright ugly, and that's it. And they think
their filters are gone.
Well, they think they can just behave like this, and you see it. It's got worse over time. That's the thing. But that links back, if you like, to what you see. People doing that, and there they all are. Hence the cartoon I put in my post from Steve Cutts. There is everyone. Ugly stuff happens. They're whipping out the smartphones and videoing it and posting it on Twitter and Facebook. So you've got that stuff going on.
Bad parenting is what it is.
Yeah, it's all blame the bloody parents. I do. So the Yale story is absolutely spot on with its connection with the evidence of the survey. The more you show likes and retweets and shares, the more people do it. And that's simplifying the argument, of course. It's more complicated than that, but that's about it, basically.
Yeah.
So, good examples to talk about.
All right. We're going to go to something much more benign after that. Okay. One of my goals, and when I say goal, I mean at work that I'm being held accountable for, and it factors into my bonus and things like that, is improving management, the culture of management at the company. And it's an uphill battle. We do a newsletter. I'm telling you this for context. I don't know if I'm going to get into this in the discussion when we're recording, but I do a monthly newsletter called Manager Talking Points, and it's short, but it begins with 3 or 4 bullet points. These are things the executive team would like you to talk about with your team. And then after every one of those, I do a spot poll. 25 randomly selected employees who do not have anybody reporting to them. And I say, has your manager talked to you about this, this? And invariably, it's about 50%. So we have managers who are just blowing this stuff off. And it's a challenge. And these two articles crossed my news feed on the same day, which I thought was interesting because they don't talk about the same reports. But one of them talks about Gen Z, and that their belief is that they would rather be communicated with respectfully and coached than get perks at work. That's how important that is to them. And the other article, Forrester research found managers who could serve as coaches drive higher engagement, but they aren't prepared for that role. So, I'm just basically going to make the argument that I know that in communications we produce intranet articles and videos and meetings and the like, but we have to go beyond that. We really need to start to influence the way people who have influence in the organization communicate. And that may mean agitating with leadership that we need the resources for training, and that we need to change our approach to bonuses and hold people accountable for this stuff because it matters. I know getting the building up matters too, but we want to be profitable, and I keep hearing about how retention is an issue, and like every company, we're losing younger people left and right who have reevaluated their lives during the work from home period.
What's your theory of, just as briefly, why these only 50% or 50% aren't doing this?
Because they don't see it as their job. They see their job as to get the building built.
So that's probably the thing that needs to be addressed then.
Right, exactly. And the CEO has gotten up there and said being a manager means coaching, and he's defined what he means, and he's been very forthright about it. And 50% of them have said, "Yeah, okay, not me."
Challenge. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the CEO said in construction, it used to be a good day when you didn't get yelled at.
Yeah, I can
And I
imagine.
suspect for half of the employees in this company, that's still a good day.
Yeah, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the moment that changed me.
This will remind you immediately, I imagine, because it certainly grabbed me, of Heather Armstrong.
Yes,
Deuced.
it's exactly what I was thinking of
Right.
when I read it.
And this woman is recounting a story of something she did in 2008.
Yeah.
Just 13 years ago. Well, that was at the time.
Mhm.
But she wasn't fired directly as a result of this, and she makes that quite clear in the Guardian piece that she was made redundant. And in fact, legally, of course, you as the individual aren't made redundant. Your job is made redundant, eliminated. Therefore, you don't have a job anymore. So I'm going to liberally quote from that piece because some of what she says, the reasoning why she did it and what she got out of it, are resonating today still. To me, it makes even more sense why blogging, writing a blog, is a very, very useful engagement channel.
Yeah.
So we may go into that in the discussion, but I'll ask you for your opinion when I've summarised what this story is about.
Sounds
and we can
good.
talk a bit about Deuced because there are some parallels as to why she did it, how she was found out, and all that kind of stuff, but not as high scale. And then one of the links I've got in there, I think it's the Urban Dictionary, that links to, I've forgotten her name, the air stewardess who was at Delta, one of the airlines in America.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
Italian
the
name she had.
Queen of the Skies, wasn't
That's
she?
it. Yeah, that's it.
What
Yeah.
was her name?
It's an Italian name. It's actually in the link. Hang on, let's have a look. Urban Dictionary. Yeah, Ellen Simonetti.
That's it.
It was Delta Airlines.
Yes.
Misuse of uniform. Yeah, I remember
Right, but
that
because-
one. I remember
I
that.
remember the photo of her in her uniform, posed real sexy on one
Yeah.
of the seats in an empty plane.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the event, and it was something, wasn't it?
Yep.
So, and there we are today in 2021, hearing a story again. Okay, it was 2008. That a lot of this sort of stuff would be going on, but you could still bring parallels today of doing something like this. Now, though, of course, you wouldn't probably do this. In fact, she makes that point at the end. But if you do, the outcome is likely to be the same, I would say.
Yeah.
Particularly a starchy law firm in Belgium. So, good.
Yeah, it's too bad that blogging isn't what it used to be, because that would probably address a lot of that anger and rage
It would.
if we were blogging instead of tweeting.
It would. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
some stuff. There's some good stuff to talk about this episode, I think.
All right, hang on. I need to get prepared here for.
Now, don't forget, I can't leave comments to anyone that I see.
No, I know.
I can't, but I can't see anyone either. There's no comments, so I guess there's no one in there.
Hang on one sec. I just need to get. Yeah, there's still nobody watching. If
Okay.
I see somebody watching, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I need to get this to here. You're recording audio too, right?
Yeah, I'm going to. I haven't pressed the record button yet. I'll wait for your word to do that.
Okay, you ready?
I'm not doing Audition. I'm doing what do you call it? Windows Voice Recorder.
Whatever.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Yep. Okay.
So, yep.
3, 2, 1, go. Oh, hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 210 of For Immediate Release. This is Shel Holtz in Concord, California.
And this is Neville Hobson in Thatcham in England.
And here we are again.
Here we are again. So episode 210. Of course, there's more than that in total. We've mentioned that before, I know, Shel, but it must be like, I don't know,
Ad nauseum.
2 million by now since we started in 2005. But here we are in August, and some interesting topics here. Lots to do with behaviors. To me, it's a pretty hot topic, this whole notion of how people behave towards each other and the role online presences have, like social networks. So we've got a few stories to share.
Yeah, and what those behaviors may look like as all of this continues to evolve into what some people think it's going to evolve into. I think it's going to be an interesting show. And you're right. You know, I was thinking as I was mentally adding up the total number of shows from when we were doing it weekly and then bi-weekly, and then I was doing it on my own for a while, and then we restarted the numbering. And, you know, we've been doing this since there were about 400 podcasts altogether. Podcasting is heating up, and nobody's come our way to say, hey, you guys have been doing this since the beginning and you haven't stopped. So we're sort of under the radar, aren't we?
We are under the radar. I saw an article about 3 weeks ago. I've forgotten where. I didn't bookmark it. About the early pioneers of podcasting, and we're conspicuous by our absence. So we need to do a bit of PR here, Shel, I think.
That's right. We should do PR about our PR podcast.
We should. Cobbler's children, I would argue, but we should do something.
Well, it has been true since the early days of PR that PR does its own worst PR.
Yeah.
So that's just the way things are.
A call to our super fans to talk about us a bit.
That's right. Everybody who's listening, get out there and say, hey, these are pioneers of podcasting. Yeah. They were using virtual cables in order to record cross-Atlantic. So, do want to let everyone know that the latest episode of Circle of Fellows will be posted shortly, probably by the time this episode of FIR is posted. It was a different episode. This was Brad Whitworth and Mark Schumann recreating and updating the session they did at the IABC World Conference this year called Time Will Tell. And it's all about how we use our time and rethinking that in order to be not just more effective, but more reflective, and to use our time to better purpose as communicators. So it was very much focused on communication and the people who work in this world. And we had Jane Mitchell and Alice Brink participating as the audience, and there wasn't much for me to moderate because it was their session, so I guess I was moderator / participant as well. But it was very enjoyable, and Bill Spaniel participated as it was on virtually, and we shared his remarks as well. So a lot of fun. I would urge you to either watch the video replay or listen to the podcast. And before we jump into our behavior-focused episode of FIR, I do want to say a word about our sponsor, Polite Mail. There's a new article up on Forbes from the Forbes Communication Council written by Michael DeRochers, who is the founder of Polite Mail. It's titled How to Measure and Improve Your Employee Communications, which sounds like a really dull title. It sounds like something I've read maybe 1,000 times, but it's still a subject that is near and dear to the hearts of a lot of the people who listen to this show and me. But he kicks off his post by saying there's one powerful question that could change how communication teams send broadcast communications. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that a significant majority of your employee audience will engage with this content? Then he wants to know, how do you know? Sharing what he's learned over the years, he makes 3 points. You don't know what your employees read until you measure it. Emails with content you're sure is relevant and engaging may not perform as well as you expect they would. And third, emails you thought few would be interested in often perform the best. Data yields insights, he writes, and insights lead to new interactions. Positive interactions can lead to results. Now, we're going to share the link to this post in the show notes, but it's worth noting that Polite Mail can play a big part in your measurement efforts. You get all kinds of data about the emails you send to employees to help you make these decisions. For example, you'll find out that the email that you sent thinking nobody would be interested in is the one that everybody engages with. Polite Mail also includes a great design tool, so you can craft emails that grab employees' attention visually. And it's all within Outlook. There's never a need to log into another website. If that sounds useful to you, visit politemail.com for more information. And as always, we thank Polite Mail for their support of For Immediate Release.
We do. So with that, let's get into our content. Our first story is a deep one. We got a lot to talk about in this one, but this is about something called the metaverse. And many of you listening may have heard of that term. Some of you think you even know what it is and have been there, but it's getting a lot of press in recent months. And so we felt this was a good moment to give our take on this. So I'm going to introduce a pretty big topic with some background, and then Shel has quite a bit to talk about as well. But let's start with a definition. What is the metaverse? And of course, if you Google it, if you Google the phrase definition of metaverse, the first result you get is typically Wikipedia. So they have a definition. I'm not going to read that out because it is very dry and your eyes will glaze and you still won't understand it. But it's worth a look because it's quite a lengthy piece, a lot of citations to other articles. The best one I think that I've seen is the World Economic Forum. I had a really good piece the other day. They explain it in very simple terms. The metaverse is a concept from science fiction that is predicted to succeed the internet. The three key aspects of the metaverse are presence, interoperability, and standardization. Companies like Facebook are aiming to make it the setting for many online activities, including work, play, studying, and shopping. They note that it's only a vision at this point, but technology companies like Facebook are aiming to make it the setting for many online activities, like I mentioned. Shel's going to talk about a lot of that in more depth and what some people and organizations are doing right now. As I mentioned, it's gained a lot of attention. The Financial Times published a really good starter piece recently that speaks of the coming battle over the metaverse, where big tech aims to shape how fully immersive virtual reality worlds evolve. Like with the information superhighway of the 1990s, they say. Do you remember that one, Shel, the information superhighway? I think it was Larry Ellison at Oracle who coined that phrase. Anyway, like with the information superhighway of the 90s, early visions of the metaverse are likely to be an imperfect approximation of what the ultimate reality will look like. What form it takes and what its first killer apps will be are a matter of conjecture. And most importantly, it's not yet settled who will set the rules and collect the profits, although today's internet giants are in a pole position. I think the FT's view of the metaverse being a piece-by-piece evolution has some merit. They say, rather than plunging users straight into a full virtual reality world, the metaverse could well take shape more gradually. Using augmented reality to project aspects of the metaverse onto the physical world, for instance, would see it take shape first as a partial digital overlay. And they have a wry conclusion. As things stand, today's internet powers are in a good position to dominate a future metaverse. If that happens, then they'll end up with far more power to shape the online lives of billions of people than they have now. What could possibly go wrong? CNN reports on why Silicon Valley is betting on making what it calls this dystopian sci-fi idea a reality. The idea is to create a space similar to the internet, says CNN, but one that users via digital avatars can walk around inside of and where they can interact with one another in real time. In theory, you could, for example, sit around a virtual meeting room with colleagues from around the world instead of staring at their 2D faces on Zoom, and then walk over to a virtual Starbucks to meet up with your mum who lives across the country. Well, I found that a bit of a now definition, when what we're really talking about is something that will start to be usable on a wide scale later this decade. Even Zoom is talking about evolved services for video engagement that look a lot like elements for the forthcoming metaverse. But hold on a minute, haven't we already been here? Remember Second Life? That was a virtual world ahead of its time in so many ways that embraced many elements of the metaverse concept, with the exception of connecting the real world. Everything is virtual in Second Life, even the community. Second Life is a 17-year-old digital world and an early version of an immersive metaverse, says Doug Antin in a May 2020 Medium post that explores the elements of Second Life and how he believes they create a metaverse. Antin is the founder of a company that offers, quote, a new narrative that makes sense of society's shift into the digital age, unquote. I think I understand what that means. He says, because it's been around for so long and developed its own history and norms, Second Life is an interesting case study in how metaverse communities evolve over time. And he notes, the Second Life community probably won't ever achieve mainstream adoption. It's too fringe and the technology doesn't support easy access to a casual user. But it does represent an incubator for what the metaverse can become. It's worth considering this perspective, I think. And Second Life is still here, by the way. I tend to pop in once every quarter or so. And so we now consider what the metaverse might be. And there's lots to consider, right, Shel?
Oh, there is indeed. And by the way, I looked it up and it was Al Gore who coined the term information superhighway. Yes.
Gosh, Larry Ellison claimed that and it wasn't him. Okay.
It wasn't him. And by the way, it was Neil Stephenson who coined the word metaverse in the book Snow Crash. So if anybody has read Snow Crash, you know what at least Stephenson's vision of the metaverse is. That wasn't the first metaverse in fiction, though. It was called something else in the first book I read that had one. He called it The Matrix. Interestingly enough, this was William Gibson in 1984 in his book Neuromancer. He would jack into the matrix and be in this virtual world that had a virtual economy. And I think that's part of a metaverse, is it has its own economy, as Second Life did. I remember Business Week had a cover story about a woman who made $1 million selling virtual real estate in Second Life. So people were actually buying and selling goods, and people were able to take the money they made and translate it back into dollars or pounds or what have you, and use them in stores or on Amazon. So that's a key element.
It is. I mean, there's been some talk this past week, actually, in one of the communication groups on Facebook about the metaverse, and a bunch of people are commenting about how you can buy virtual clothes and all this stuff is amazing. I chipped in naturally saying, hey, listen, I remember doing this in the OOs in Second Life. In fact, I bought a whole wardrobe of stuff. Still in fashion, by the way. I still change clothes when I go there. So this is not new. And it's not to denigrate anyone who kind of thinks it is, because Second Life is now, its heyday was in the noughties, up to about 2010. And it's still around, it's evolved, and there's a successor available. But it's not front of mind. This is now front of mind. Things have changed quite radically.
Yeah, and there are companies, particularly in the gaming world, that have built these virtual worlds that are also kind of precursors to the metaverse. You can wander all over these worlds into different environments. Roblox, I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. I'm not 8 and I don't play it. Roblox, Fortnite. They're both betting that popular video game worlds that they offer will have an early foothold in the metaverse. Roblox's CEO, Dave Baszucki, said the company sees its 15-year-old platform as a hub for virtual and immersive experiences where people can simultaneously attend concerts, go to school, participate in staff meetings. They've been investing heavily in technology and growing its workforce to support these kinds of experiences. And they're also investing in content moderation, making the point that it has to be a civil and safe platform that welcomes 6-year-olds, the ones who play the game. At the same time, it's welcoming 30-year-olds going to the office or a concert. The CEO of Unity, this is a platform for creating interactive real-time content for games and apps. He's enthusiastic. His name is John Riccatello, and he thinks his company is positioned well to help shape the metaverse concept. On a earnings call recently, he said, and I'm quoting, "We believe the adoption of real-time 3D will change the way people interact with digital content and entertainment, just as digital replaced analog, HD replaced standard definition. In the coming year, 5G will replace 3G or 4G, and real-time 3D will replace linear and flat 2D digital content. We expect more of the world's content to be 3D, real-time, and interactive." He also said he doesn't see the metaverse as a single company's property. If you remember the book and the movie Ready Player One, it was all one company that was behind it. He said, we believe there's going to be hundreds of thousands of destinations in the metaverse. So it was more of a federated concept, like Mastodon is for...
Yeah. But I mean, this is actually just skirting around the edges of it, because to kind of get a sense of what this really could be, I think you need to think of the evolved internet, because things like, a company doing 3D stuff or this company building this, these are just elements. That's not, and they're part of a constituent whole. So if you look at what the internet could be, and I'm meaning that from the description of what the internet currently is, which is a decentralized network of networks. It's something that knits together all the individual networks. So
exactly, and it's a protocol.
How would that work? Well, no, it's more than that. But how would that work with something like this? This is the interesting thing, where much of what I'm seeing in a lot of the articles that we've collected to talk about, including the FT has got more on that as well, which is that the tech companies, let's call them big tech, capital B, capital T, particularly Facebook, are exceptionally well positioned to literally set the ground rules for what the metaverse might become. And therein is a worry by lots of people.
A lot of people are very concerned about that.
Yeah, and that's triggering, I've seen it already, talk from some in governments about, we need to regulate this. And you got that element to it as this is starting to get rolling. So all these companies, and Facebook's in there too, who have suddenly started talking about this, are setting their claims out. And indeed, Zuckerberg is quoted in a number of these pieces on the Facebook earnings call a week or so ago, talking about they're going to be a metaverse company. And it's not a bandwagon phrase. This is not a PR stunt thing. It's deadly serious.
Oh, yeah.
And so to grasp the scale of it is really the point I'm making here. This is the successor to the internet, and no one knows how it's going to shape up. And this is probably like a gold rush. This is like a Wild West thing.
Yeah, this is definitely Mark Zuckerberg's vision and has been for some time. I mean, we can talk about everything he does bad and wrong, but it definitely envisions the internet as a place where you can be with other people in real time, not just see them on a screen. So he's definitely guiding his company there, but at the same time, that means he's going to be capturing all of your data, right, in the metaverse. John Hanke, the founder and CEO of Niantic, sees it as a dystopian nightmare. No surprise, he prefers augmented reality and says Niantic is working on a real-world metaverse. You referenced this earlier, one that overlays data, information services, and interactive creations in the physical world, so you can see it on your phone. But I think, when most people talk about this, they talk about putting on some sort of VR goggles and being in a different place. When I mentioned protocols earlier, HTTP, because everybody agreed that this is what we're going to use, meant you could bounce from one website to another without opening a different piece of software. And the metaverse will be like that. Everybody has to agree to a certain set of standards so that you can move. I remember that Second Life tried to do this once. I don't remember what the other world was, but they wanted you to be able to move back and forth. It may have been the open source version of Second Life that they created, that they wanted to be able to let people move back and forth, and it never really happened.
Well, the tech wasn't there yet. That's a factor, as well as standards in particular. But that's again an element of this that is still a question mark. I mean, the worst thing is essentially things like malware attacks, DDoS attacks, the works you see on the public internet now at huge scale in the metaverse. So that's a worry. It's a concern. You've got to think about that. So it's not just all these whiz-bang content ideas. Hey, 3D goggles, blah, blah, all that stuff. It's the plumbing you've got to think about as well.
Exactly. Jessica Goodfellow, I read an article she wrote on Campaign, the marketing and advertising site, about the fact that a few giant tech companies will monopolize all of this with business models built on establishing scale and muscling out competitors. I mean, good heavens, anybody tries to...
It's a capitalist society, right? So
but I mean, think about Facebook. Somebody starts something and they develop their own, or they acquire Instagram, and suddenly everybody else trying to do this is blown out of the water. I don't see how that would be different here. But they're going to keep their strongest assets, user data, within their walled gardens, she says. She quotes Wilfred Obeng, CTO of a company called Audio Mob. He said, "I don't think the metaverse is inherently good or bad as a concept. It's how we as people use it that will make the metaverse a utopia or a dystopia, and it will probably be a bit of both, just like reality. I equally believe that initially the metaverse will be a place to dip into rather than continuously occupy. We're not going to suddenly see reality abandoned, but the idea of a persistent shared virtual space without the limitations of reality has so many exciting implications. We could see concepts like fashion, identity, gaming, travel, sport, performance, creative processes, work, and more expand and evolve in so many simultaneous directions. The possibilities there for brands to provide remarkable experiences are really exciting." And that's a viewpoint I really like.
A deja vu of Second Life. I remember hearing all that in 2006. But, people are trying to figure this out and evolve. But what I'm hearing and what I've read in these pieces is that, this is definitely still a concept. There's nothing knitted together at all yet. And that's not any kind of critique, by the way. It's simply an observation. Got a lot of people, a lot of ideas, a lot of people experimenting with small things. And again, that fits with the Financial Times' assessment of individual elements that come together, some of which will overlay what you can do online. And that's probably in the realm of avatars with the goggles and all that kind of stuff that you mentioned. But I'm also thinking some of the things that I saw when I was working at IBM, for instance, that talked about the interoperability of virtual and real via not so much goggles. It was kind of beyond that, and there were some demos created that were truly extraordinary. And AI plays a huge role in all of that. So we're not yet at the stage where you've got real life avatars that can materialize right next to you, and therefore you've got that connecting real and virtual outside of various experiments, because there are holograms that are available right now that can do that. So like you can have a fish tank in your living room and sharks swimming around. I've seen some of those things. That's not scale or mass anywhere close to it. So that's really what we're talking about. And I think it's probably useful to point that out, that the notion of this becoming available at scale around the world is probably decades away. I wouldn't be surprised. So maybe not.
No, but
on a small scale where you've got people doing little things within organizations, and some organizations will connect, so you've got those things happening. That's how this will start. That fits what the FT say.
Sure, and the firing shots are out there. What Facebook announced the other day was called workrooms within a virtual space they're calling Horizon, and I tried it. I signed up for it. I got the invitation, and I have to admit it's pretty cool. I wasn't able to do much for two reasons. First, I was there alone. I don't know anyone with a Quest headset that I could invite to join me. That's the problem. I think I read that 5 million Quest 2s have been sold. They believe they're on their way to 10 million, but that still makes it spotty for me just to reach out and say, who's got a Quest that wants to join me in here?
Well, there you go. I mean, from my point of view, I've never even heard of the Quest, so I'm obviously not paying attention. What is it, a headset?
Yeah. This is with the Oculus Quest 2.
Got it.
The other problem I had, in fact, was the fact that just as I was starting to look around, I got the low battery warning on the Quest headset, so I had to take it off and charge it up. But I'll be going back in. One thing bothered me. The whole thing, it tells you. In fact, I accidentally, when I was doing something else in my headset this morning, opened that. It said, you have to have a desk. So it wants to approximate your desk in the space and have you work on your desk, but you're seeing it in this virtual world. But it supports about 5 different keyboards. So if your keyboard isn't one of the one it supports, then you can't use that functionality. And I'm not going to go out and buy one of those keyboards just to do that. It doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means you can't do that thing.
This is all very much early adopter territory and experimentation.
Right. Opinions are pretty mixed on workrooms right now, but Alex Heath, writing in The Verge, he said he doesn't see it catching on beyond diehard VR fans. But Dan York shared a blog post with us from Charlie Warzel, where he very grudgingly said he liked it. He said, I don't like that I feel this way. I didn't want to feel this way. I am not a big fan of Facebook, and I am extremely wary of the company colonizing more parts of the tech ecosystem, including enterprise technology. I don't trust this company and don't want them to be doing this, which makes it very hard to abstain from dunking on this. But my righteous desire to posterize this droopy cartoon avatar of Mark Zuckerberg via tweets conflicts with another hobby of mine, which is advocating for more flexible avenues of work. And Facebook's Horizon Workrooms, while coming from the wrong messenger, is a step in that direction. Heath said he was impressed by the way Workrooms brings together parts of the outside world into VR. You can have up to 16 people in a workroom together, while an additional 34 can join over video call without wearing a headset. They can just be sitting at their computer with the webcam on. A companion desktop app lets you beam a live feed of your computer screen over your virtual table space. One post I read about Workrooms featured a Facebook executive saying that there's never been anything like this ever. Which is not true. I've been on Spatial a few times, and it's very, very similar, and in some ways it's better. But we need to see organizations trying this stuff so the ones that work get adopted and become the pieces that eventually form the early metaverse when that takes shape.
I agree with that, and in fact, it's got me thinking further. I think going back to the understanding of what the current internet is, a network of networks, that fits this model of elements of a metaverse. Let's call it the metaverse, the same way we call it the internet. And of course, to separate that definition, as Dan York, if he were here, would point out, capital I internet, not lowercase I internet. So you'll have metaverses, lowercase m's, everywhere that are knitted together and enabled via the metaverse, capital M. And the interesting thing, or one interesting thing that will be part of all the debates, is who runs that. Is it going to be decentralized totally like the internet? I can see almost overwhelming pressure coming from the usual suspects, frankly, meaning governments and big tech notably. And maybe big tech, we can extend that to define not just the usual suspects, because there are other suspects now who will want to run the metaverse, capital M. So interesting times ahead. In the meantime, like you said, I agree with that. Companies, organizations of all shapes and sizes ought to experiment, ought to be open to seeing what this can offer. And the links you'll find in the show notes, by the way, will go to a lot of interesting articles that will help you see this in better detail. But this is coming. Make no mistake about it. And if you want it to come according to the flavor that Mark Zuckerberg sees, then don't do anything. If you'd like us to be part of the debate that shapes this, not just Mark Zuckerberg's vision, get involved. That's what I would do. So it's definitely worth it.
It's my hope that you will be able to participate in the metaverse with parts that were cobbled together by the Amazons and the Facebooks of the world, but also parts that were put together by the Chris Penns and Chris Brogans of the world.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, let's talk about another virtual asset, another digital part of the world that is getting more and more attention and driving some interesting behaviors, and that's NFTs. Now, when NFTs started getting a lot of attention, you and I were sort of dismissive about them. We thought they were interesting. We thought they'd be a short-lived trend. I mean, people spending big money for a digital link to a digital asset that might not even be there the next day if the site vanished or something else happened, just didn't seem sustainable. Now, for listeners who might still be wondering what NFTs are, I have a short explanation from a Saturday Night Live sketch that had Kate McKinnon playing Janet Yellen, the United States Treasury Secretary, trying to explain it to a classroom full of students. And not hearing a decent explanation, she turns to the janitor who happens to be walking by and asks him, and here's how he put it. I'm just going to make a time code and insert it since you listened.
Yeah. It's really good. It really is. Yeah.
So that actually is a good explanation, don't you think?
It's very well done, well produced, and the lyrics are terrific, and the style of it is great. That'll appeal to, unquestionably, a youth audience.
Yeah. Anyway, if you missed what he was singing there, NFTs they're unique digital assets that are built on blockchains, and you can sell the link to these asset that is stored on the blockchain, which gives you an exclusive right to this. NFT is a non-fungible right. Fungible meaning it's non-fungible meaning that it's unique. And people are buying them. According to a recent post by marketing consultant Shelley Palmer, sales of NFTs have topped $2.5 billion since January of this year, and another $2 billion has been invested into the NFT sector so far this year. Now, the question is, where is all this money going? So let's skip who's investing in the market and look at where people are spending money on actual NFTs. There's the NFT meta world trend, which relates directly to the metaverse conversation. For example, the Sandbox is an open NFT. They're calling it a metaverse. I'll call it a proto-metaverse or pre-metaverse that lets you create, play, and monetize your creations. Decentraland is run by a decentralized autonomous organization. That's a DAO. It's a decentralized world where people are spending millions of fiat dollars to buy real estate, where people are building all kinds of things to see and do. There are even virtual casinos there. And there's Axie Infinity, an NFT game kind of like Pokemon, where players collect, train, feed, buy, and train Axies, making it profitable for players, profitable to the point where some of them have made it their full-time jobs. They're making a living doing this. And I thought it was ridiculous to make a living as an influencer. There are also NFTs for decentralized media. LivePeer bills itself as the world's open video infrastructure, a decentralized video streaming network built on the Ethereum blockchain. There's Audius, a decentralized streaming audio platform, a sort of decentralized Spotify. There are NFTs for tickets and fan development, which could wind up being huge since it can go a long way to eliminating duplicate tickets or fraudulent tickets. Remember, every NFT is unique, so a barcode reader would let you know right away that the ticket in your digital wallet is the real thing. And Shelley Palmer talks about next-level marketing opportunities with NFTs. Here's what he says. Whether your audience is a community of interest, a community of practice, or a community of passion, next-level marketers will have the opportunity to let their imaginations run free. What does your audience value the most? How can you empower them to participate? What additional value can you help them obtain? What's the next generation of loyalty program? How much access to star attractions can they achieve? Smart contracts will give smart marketers the tools they need to develop new kinds of marketing programs with ongoing automated value creation components built in. If you search, you're going to find a lot of articles about brands experimenting with NFTs. One came out recently on The Drum that covered companies like Coca-Cola. They're auctioning special edition virtual loot boxes of NFTs. It's a vending machine inspired by video game loot boxes, which reveals items like a futuristic bubble jacket wearable. They're donating their proceeds to the Special Olympics, by the way, which is kind of nice. The South China Morning Post launched its Artifact Light Paper for recording accounts of history and historical assets on the blockchain as NFTs. They call it an opportunity to discover, collect, showcase, trade, and reanimate meaningful moments and objects from our collective human experience. And one of the most interesting NFT-related items I've seen recently is from the Envoy Network, which wants to be the premium NFT label developing contents for brands, music, and entertainment companies. It's kicked off on August 14th a digital billboard in Times Square called the Decentra Board. An Adweek article explained that the board offers 1,040 opportunities for individuals and notable pieces to be curated and displayed on the screen as NFTs, offering publishing rights to appear all year round. The first releases are from a comic book and Marvel producer, a singer, an artist, movie producers, and writers for titles like Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So for all you marketers out there listening, NFTs may not be the flash in the pan we originally thought they would be. These things may have legs.
Yeah, you're right. I was thinking about Christopher Penn, who posted a comment on Facebook yesterday saying, I issued my first NFT today. I still don't get it. I'm there. Not with the issuing. I still
Yes.
do not understand what the hell NFTs are.
Yeah, I hear
the word fungible and my eyes just completely shut, never mind go glazed. It's getting your head around the concept where you can have legal rights to something you don't actually own the original, even though you've got the rights to. What have you got the rights to? Not the original. It's a copy, is it?
You get the rights to it's basically to a smart contract that is stored on the
No, but what do you
blockchain.
actually own? You've coughed up money. What?
Yeah,
what
you own that
copy.
contract, that link to the copy, so nobody else can get to what you have the link to. It could be a piece of art, but you don't own the art. That's stored on a website somewhere. You own the link to it, right? So this is why people were making great fun of them when they were new, which was not that long ago.
There's nothing actually tangible.
Oh no, nothing tangible. But yet, I mean, you have the National Basketball Association, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, is selling NFTs of short clips of plays from recent games where you can be the exclusive owner of that clip. Now, what you can do with it, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't dug that deeply into it, but you don't actually own the piece of video. You own the thing on the blockchain that links to it and says, this is yours.
Yeah, I guess partly that's in my mind because I read a story, I read a news item about a week, 10 days ago about the British Olympic team at the Tokyo Olympics, Team GB, had offered NFTs of some collectibles for fans. And all the reports I read too, actually, that talked about you get an alternative way to connect with the team. Your money can do this and that, without defining what exactly do you get for your money. So is it like you're getting some a T-shirt or what is it you're getting? Something that's works of art. Now they don't say anything at all. None of those reports. What you just said, i.e., it's a link to a digital version on a blockchain somewhere. So that kind of reporting doesn't actually help it at all. That's part of the thing. It hasn't got its
Right.
own, it's a clear way of explaining what these things are. But you're right. I mean, there are people making money out of all this. And I tell you, for one, I don't understand how they're doing that. But
Right. But I'll tell you, I think as this continues to evolve, what it is under the hood is going to, or under the bonnet, is going to become less and less important. If, in fact, this makes it harder for people to scalp tickets or to issue counterfeit tickets and sell them because you have the NFT for the unique ticket in your wallet on your phone. And when you get to the front of the line and they scan that barcode and it's proof that you're the one who owned that ticket, who cares that it's on the blockchain and it's a smart contract that links to the ticket? No one's going to care, just as long as nobody says that's a counterfeit ticket, you can't come in.
got it, I think.
All right, we'll go to Dan here.
Yep.
Okay, since you're next, you want to thank Dan? Or did we? We don't have to. We could just
No,
go
I
into
think
it.
it always sounds a bit fake doing that because I have no idea what he's
Yeah.
reported on. So
We could say that, but
yeah, I'd
we haven't had your report yet, Dan.
Yeah, just slot it in there when you get it.
Yeah, okay.
So let's move on to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. This behavior thing is another angle on this, and this is not a good one in a sense because we'll all recognise this, and it's kind of uncomfortable, I think, in many regards. But it is part of what we're seeing. I wrote a blog post about this, and the headline kind of talks about it: the vicious cycle of anger, hostility, and outrage on social networks. So I asked myself the question, why in recent years has there been such a significant and notable increase in vile behaviours online, where people say the most awful things about other people with little fear of consequences? In the blog post that I wrote on this topic, I linked to some examples here in the UK of why footballers get racially abused online all the time. And that's a huge topic right now in current affairs in the UK. Why people make death threats on social networks. And that's an example here of a woman who runs the National College of Midwifery here in the UK, talking about midwives getting COVID vaccinations. And she got death threats on Twitter, and they were pretty ugly. And in fact, the people making them, as an aside, must have been completely stupid because the cops just couldn't show up quite, because the real names and all this kind of stuff. No shame at all. And that's another alarming aspect of this. People don't really have any shame in disguising themselves. Celebrities saying offensive things, and that's becoming a lot more common than it used to be. So given that some of the, or much of the invective you see in tweets, Facebook posts, and other social content displays such alarming anger, hostility, and outrage, indeed it seems that anything that expresses an opinion not aligned with someone else's views produces highly disproportionate outrage from the latter. I think this goes deeper than something superficial that's happened because of lockdown or whatever it might be. A very long period of time this has been building in society as a whole. That idea is borne out in a book by journalist Charles Arthur called Social Warming. Think of global warming, that's the allusion to the word warming, that I'm about 30% through. I'm reading it on my Kindle, right? So I don't know what the page number is.
Yeah, I immediately knew that.
Right, you did. People who don't do Kindles may not, but it's a very, very good book. it's caught my attention big time, and I've been thinking a lot about this. The book starts, in fact, it's like the first 20%, with examining the causes of social ugliness and the rise in such behaviors online, looking into how people behave online and the roles of the places where behaviors are exhibited, social networks particularly, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and many, many others. The book's intro offers a good clue to what's in store in its pages. It says social warming has happened gradually as a byproduct of our preposterously convenient digital existence. But the gradual deterioration of our attitudes and behaviors on and offline, this vicious cycle of anger and outrage, is real. I think that's absolutely right. There's further evidence in a study published on August the 13th, literally a week or so ago, by Yale University in the US. It shows that people who get more likes and retweets when they express outrage in their messages are more likely to express outrage in later posts. That supports one of the key elements in Charles Arthur's book, which is about the role of social networks like Facebook, and particularly Facebook, and the specific function of the algorithms that are tuned to showing users the kind of stuff it thinks users would like to see. And Arthur goes into a lot of detail explaining all of that and how it all works. It's definitely worth a read if just to understand all of that. So the report that Yale did notes the following. Amplification of moral outrage is a clear consequence of social media's business model, which optimizes for user engagement. Given that moral outrage plays a crucial role in social and political change, we should be aware that tech companies, through the design of their platforms, have the ability to influence the success or failure of collective movements. And that raises another question. All the stuff we saw last year of Mark Zuckerberg and some of the other social networks sitting in front of the US Congress being grilled by politicians who were clueless about the technology, and nothing really happened as a result of that. Some of the things we've seen recently, particularly the egregious behavior on Facebook by the likes of Cambridge Analytica, and how they misuse people's data, no matter what the terms and conditions of Facebook says, they just go ahead and do it. We're hearing this almost daily. I saw a story just the other day, T-Mobile in the US, 40 million users have had their data stolen, and that'll be misused. And so nothing seems to happen as a result of this, except that people get angry. And that's the weirdest thing of all. And it seems to me that Charles Arthur and Yale in particular have zeroed in on, is it the root cause? I'm not sure it's the root cause. It's the kind of causation link, if you like, to those behaviors through the manipulation effect of a tech-driven algorithm. We see it to a lesser extent on some of the other social networks. So this is part of our current landscape. And I think many people don't quite understand that, even though they think they might. Governments don't seem to, otherwise we would have seen something more happening by now. So I just wonder, Shel, where the hell we go from here with all of this. I see people calling for more regulation and prohibition of this, and if people behave badly, they kick them off. So who's going to define badly, and who's going to make that decision, so that we end up with a cleaner landscape? Unfortunately, the world, real and virtual, isn't like that, because as we are often fond of saying, what we see on virtual worlds like social networks is a reflection of what we see in the real world, people's behaviors in particular. So how do we address this? And that's something no one really has an answer to. Otherwise, we would have seen something by now. Politicians have a responsibility. I'm not sure ultimately what that responsibility actually is. Is it just to regulate and blanket control? In democracies, things don't work that way. So that's part of the big picture discussion too. So where do we go from here? What do you reckon, Shel?
Oh, I wish I knew. The organizations that had come together to try to deal with this failed. We interviewed Jolie Odell and Andrea Veckerle here not that long ago, Civil and Nation. They have since closed shop. They're gone. And that was an organized effort. Jimmy Wales was involved with that to try to make the online space more civil. So that didn't work. And it's interesting to me how we have this, I guess you would call it an unvirtuous circle, that behavior in the real world reinforces behavior online, reinforces behavior in the real world. Look at what's been going on airlines lately. And I think, people are sort of shrugging this off, saying, oh, people have been cooped up because of COVID, and now they're just out and getting on these planes, and they just don't remember how to behave, or all this pent up anger is just being released. That's nonsense. Yeah, I blame their parents personally. I mean,
You always
they just
do.
weren't raised well, right?
Blame the parents. I mean, this is actually at the heart, I think, of what Charles Arthur's driving at in his book in particular, where he gives you in that first 20% of the book, as I mentioned, the background to why, how this is built up over decades of behavior and social evolution. And now we've got social networks in the frame that amplify a lot of this stuff. And you then think about the role of the mainstream media here, particularly the tabloid press, in amplifying a lot of this stuff. And I see stuff sometimes that I've seen mentioned on Facebook, particularly, sometimes Twitter, but typically Facebook, that hasn't really made the mainstream until it gets into a tabloid. And that's when you then see it growing and being amplified, particularly when it's a celebrity. Yeah. So the tabloids, the usual suspects here in the UK include the Daily Mail, for instance, who report on celebrities, or actually report is a generous word, who publish stuff about celebrities, and including, the actual tweets or whatever they've done liberally throughout, especially when they're rude about somebody. And then the reactions. Then you've got the comments to it all that they can get amplified as well. And of course, they've got online editions too, so you see it online too. So this is part of something that this landscape didn't exist as recently as 20 years, meaning before the start of the 21st century. Yeah, we had online, and yes, we had then the burgeoning social media start in the early part of the century, blogging and all that, and then social networks came on the scene. Before that, there wasn't the scale of this, and you couldn't easily disseminate stuff, and you certainly couldn't have a thought, anger developed, write 280 characters and tap something, and boom, it's out in the world. That didn't exist at all. Now everyone knows how to do that. So part of it, again, going back to the behavior thing, and this is my projecting it out, that you see people's behavior is almost like they're being conditioned by what they read, and they whip out their smartphones and they'll share it, they'll photograph it, or they'll tweet it or whatever. So in my blog post, I included the cartoon an animated cartoon by a guy called Steve Cutts, who created this in 2016, that supported a rock track by a group called Moby. And, I've forgotten the last name of the supporting band Moby was with. But the music's a great track, by the way, but the cartoon is fabulous because it's very insightful in behaviors of people engrossed in their smartphones. And I'm paying more attention to this when I'm out, by the way, when I'm just around. And I see people sitting in restaurants and through the window, and there's people sitting together and they're looking at their smartphones separately. So that's all part of it now. So you see something and you share it. And so Twitter's move not long ago, if you retweet something, it'll ask you, sure, you want to read the article first. If you haven't, it knows. So that might stop you. I don't think it will in the end. And I have no idea, to be truthful, Shel, how this can be resolved in a way that makes sense. You can't just stop people tweeting just because someone thinks they were rude or offensive, unless you agree that we've got these rules in society and everyone's got to have to follow them. And that isn't quite how things work. But the cost is high, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not new. It was 2014 when Justine Sacco tweeted before she boarded a plane to South Africa what was a dumb joke that led to her losing her job, as people retweeted it, and the hashtag "When Does Justine Land" went viral. And we also had that dentist who shot the elephant that had to go into hiding when the mob mentality has been around for a while, and I guess what we need is the Scout Finch of the internet, right? If you've seen or read To Kill a Mockingbird, the mob shows up at the courthouse to lynch the character, and Atticus is there trying to talk them down, and Scout, his daughter, steps forward, and she's the one who defuses the crowd, and they all end up going home. We need that. We need somebody who can jump into these. And, I'm reminded of the K-pop crowd that went in, and they've sort of defused big hashtags by overtaking them and using them to send K-pop messages rather than the hate or racist message that they were designed to do. if we could channel that kind of energy to defuse the mobs, maybe the mobs would stop behaving that way. I'm thinking of smoking as a good example. You and I are both ex-smokers, right?
Yeah.
And why is there less smoking these days? It is not because of laws. It is because it became culturally unacceptable. There are rules, right? You can't smoke in restaurants in the United States, for example. But I think it is really the fact that most people now look at you sideways if you light up in public. And it's led a lot of people to say, I'm not going to deal with this. I think we need something like that. It needs to become culturally unacceptable to behave that way. And that requires some kind of movement, I think.
It does. And it also requires a willingness of people to change their behavior.
Yeah.
And there's very little sign of that, because what I observe, you must see it too, I see it online a lot, where someone says something and someone doesn't like it, and instead of a disagreeing argument that appears, it gets suddenly vicious, it gets violent verbally, and you think, my God, what the hell's going on here? And you think, if those two people were physically together, they'd be a fight. And if it was in the US, someone would probably get shot, because everyone carries guns, as we know, right? So here in the UK, in urban centres, it probably gets stabbed because kids have knives. So there's no control. I don't know what it is. I don't know how that would be resolved if we require a voluntary solution by people. What's the alternative? Some kind of forcible solution? I don't know what that would even look like. So I see a dilemma that there doesn't seem to be an apparent solution. Yet I share your view that, for want of a better phrase, something must be done about this.
Yeah, you mentioned death threats earlier, and this is one of the things that just drives me crazy. Is, do we have to resort to death threats?
For some people,
I was about to say as quickly as we do, but at all. I don't understand this. It makes me nuts.
No, I agree. Well, there's no conclusion to this, by the way. We didn't set out to discuss it to come up with an agreement or a conclusion.
We're going to solve the problems of the world in a 65-minute podcast. Right?
Yeah. So the only thing I want to conclude on this by mentioning is that there's a guy here in the UK called Johnny Moore, who I've been connected with Johnny since about 2005 online, based in London, who's a mentor and a business consultant. He read my post and read the other content I linked to, and he set up an Eventbrite meeting via Zoom to discuss this on September the 1st at 4 p.m. UK time. And that, if I'm not wrong, Shell is 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US. It's, as I say on Eventbrite, it's called an unhurried conversation. And Johnny, there's a lot of these unhurried conversations. Again, this doesn't have a concluding goal to get opinion and air this. So anyone can join in. If you'd like to join in, there'll be a link in the show notes to the Eventbrite page. Just sign up and come along. So maybe we can add some more thoughts to this thorny topic.
I may just do that if I don't have a meeting already scheduled.
Yeah.
Speaking of my job, these days I work mainly in internal communications. So as you can deduce here, we're going to lower the temperature with this conversation. I've been focused for a couple of years now on managers in my company, getting them to be better managers. You've probably heard the old line that people don't quit their companies, they quit their bosses. Now, from a statistical standpoint, that's only partly true, but it's true enough that we want to do something about it. And it's hard. I have to tell you, changing the culture of management in an organization is hard. I've been up against this for a couple of years now, and I would say the progress has been glacial, despite a number of changes that we've made to the communication strategy to address it. I read a couple of articles, and interestingly, they both crossed my newsfeed on the same day. Unrelated research reinforced why this is so important. The first comes from a site called Futurity, a source of research news from leading universities. Is how they build themselves. This particular article covers a study that finds that workers aged 21 to 34 place more value on having more respectful communication in the workplace than they do on trendy work perks. Danielle Legree, an assistant professor of strategic communication at Kansas State University, worked with her colleagues to survey more than 1,000 full-time workers, analyzing how they rated workplace culture aspects representative of the companies that they worked for at the time. And those aspects were respectful engagement, autonomous respect, occupational resilience, job satisfaction, employee loyalty and retention, and job engagement. And participants in the study rated these on a 1 to 5 scale. Legree said the study shows that more emphasis needs to go to training managers to be effective communicators and convey respectful communication with their employees. She wrote, actively recognizing employees for the value they bring to the organization will help equip them to bounce back after adversity, to perform better in their jobs, and to be more committed to their organizations in the long term. The second article cites a report from Forrester that found that managers who can serve as coaches to their direct reports can drive high levels of engagement, but managers aren't naturally prepared to serve in this role. Here's what Forrester said. Coaching empowers employees by ensuring managers actively listen and meet their direct reports where they are. But managers are often promoted without any training in coaching techniques, creating frustration across the board. Bad managers engage in unproductive behaviors such as micromanagement, providing limited or no feedback, and focusing on weaknesses rather than strengths. Now, this is especially true in the COVID era, given that maintaining employee performance is one of the bigger questions about the rise of the hybrid model. I'm sorry, I need to make a time code note and re-say that. I said the wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is especially relevant in the COVID era, given that maintaining employee performance is one of the bigger questions around the rise of the hybrid work model, and coaching may be one of the ways to achieve that goal. And a report from the Association for Talent Development, this would be, I guess, people who do training and development, found that 60% of those surveyed said the top barrier to effective coaching was not holding managers accountable for it. What all this means to me is that employee communication has to go beyond producing stuff. And I know that most of the people doing internal communications get that. But we have to focus some of our energy on helping others in the organization communicate effectively, and even agitating for changes in bonus and promotion programs so they do, in fact, hold managers accountable for how they communicate with their reports, including how well they perform as coaches. This is one reason I always disparaged these programs that did a one-shot manager training on communication, because it didn't mean they were going to be held accountable for it. And even where I saw they were held accountable, it was 10% of their overall score. And if 90% was getting the product out the door, guess where they were going to focus their energy? And by the way, as a bit of a tangent, on last month's show, we talked about social audio. And I mentioned I'd set up an account on Beams. This is right now an iOS-only app that is short-form social audio. Mine is dedicated to employee communication, and so far I've attracted 17 members. And the various recordings there from me and from some of those members have been listened to 151 times. This got the attention of Beams. They used their social media channels to hype my internal comms beam, which led one person to join who doesn't work in the field. She is a consumer of internal comms as an employee in her company, and she offered some great perspective. I'll have a link to it in the show notes if anyone's interested in short-form audio conversations on internal communications. But among the people who are participating, Katie McCauley, Sharon McIntosh, Mark Dollins, Brad Whitworth, and I kind of like it. And I intend to talk about this issue of manager communication there shortly.
If I had Beams on my Android phone, I'd be joining you. But
it's coming.
It's coming.
They keep swearing it's coming.
I'm on the alert list when they bring it out. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, particularly what you said, quoting from one of the reports you mentioned about not holding managers accountable for it. Is to me it seems like, why don't you do that? Mr. Employer, why don't you hold your managers accountable for it? Don't let them get away with this. It makes sense, and like you said as well on communication, there's too much focus on output as opposed to outcomes. It seems to me a lot of the time. We publish 15 whatever this week or this month or this year or whatever it might be. So I would imagine that you also refer to a report from the Association of Talent Development that these must be part of talent training programs, meaning getting the most out of your talent, meaning the employees. So to me, and this is a superficial view based on no deep research here, this makes no sense that companies do not hold managers accountable. I don't get it.
Yep. And managers are directly responsible for the profitability of an organization.
Yeah,
If the managers are terrible, I mean, I remember when IBM, because they used to be the model for
they did.
managers. Harvard Business School used to take students to IBM to watch managers manage, and they lost that,
Oh
and that's
boy.
why they started that manager jam. You remember way back when
Yeah.
they used the early social media tools to have the
Was that
manager jam
wasn't that
to try to find that mojo again.
Mike Wing who was doing that?
Yep.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. No, yeah, they did, and things seem to me to be very changed, and maybe there's effects there because of the consequences of lockdowns, meaning working from home a lot. So you're out of sight, out of mind, or even some managers might think, "Phew, I'm glad I don't have to engage all the time with these people." So the workplace has evolved as well. Maybe the approach needs to evolve. I'm not sure what the current approach is, but maybe the formality of doing this needs to change, and maybe the engagement with managers to secure commitments need to be reinforced in somehow, because it's simply not good enough that managers with team responsibilities, particularly, just brush it off and say, I'm not going to do this, or yeah, when I got time. No, this is, you've got to do this. So you can apply that argument to a lot of things, actually, Shell. But this, as we talk about this, that ought to apply here.
Yeah, you need to give managers the training and the tools to
Yeah,
do it effectively, and then you need to reinforce it with reward and recognition and hold
yeah,
them accountable.
yeah.
It's not rocket science,
It's
but
not. It's not.
it's also not being done in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, not good. Food for thought then. So we look forward to joining you on a Beams as soon as I get my Android version.
Look forward to having you there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I think this is the final story come out, isn't it? This is just
It is.
brief. Yeah, just brief. I saw this the other day and I thought, oh my God, such a deja vu. Many of you listening who've been around a while may know of Heather Armstrong, may perhaps know more well the word dooced, DOOCED, that applied to Heather Armstrong. And this was an event that happened back in the early days of blogging. Well, guess what? We have another one. And this story, I just loved this story, I must admit. This was published in The Guardian just the other day. The headline is what caught my attention to it. A moment that changed me, my boss discovered my secret blog. And this, to kind of take away your sense of anticipation, just to be upfront with the transparency, this happened in 2008, about the same time, roughly, more or less, give or take a year or so, to the Deuced episode with Heather Armstrong. So it's not new, but it's worth looking at it. The story was just published, by the way, but the event actually took place in 2008. It's a woman called Emma Beddington, who's a freelance writer based in the UK today. In 2008, she was an employee at a law firm in Brussels until they found out about her blog. Here's how it starts. Bored working in a law firm in Brussels, I filled my time writing anonymously online about love, life, and how dull my job was. Then my colleagues found my post. That's the intro. It was 2008, she says, the heyday of blogging. And in what we quaintly call the blogosphere, women were relating their lives in raw, unguarded, funny ways. It felt like a special moment, and looking back, I'm even more conscious of how particular and short-lived it was. Nothing was off limits. The bloggers I loved wrote about their minds, their bodies, and relationships. A Brussels acquaintance wrote a blog called My Boyfriend is a Twat. It's a very British word, by the way, but it's funny in the context. Or the discombobulating experience of parenting, how it could be an alienating, exhausting bore as well as a joy. There were no brand partnerships, but blogging seemed to offer something even better, community and real connection. Blogging made the impossible feel possible. I wrote voraciously, never short of material. A lot had happened over the previous few years. I'd had 2 babies, moved countries 3 times, lost a parent, and lost my mind more than once. Sometimes I wrote about that. More often I reviewed snacks, related weird street encounters, or explained Belgian supermarkets. The gentle absurdities of office life, unnecessary internal meetings, corporate jargon, and bizarre office traditions were also fruitful material, and I made my colleagues into a cast of characters. Gradually, I found a few readers, and more gradually that readership grew. It was a genuinely transformative time. To be finally writing finally felt exhilarating, and I forged real connections, making friends who remain woven deep into the fabric of my life, and enjoying a wealth of bizarre or moving one-off exchanges. My blog was not hugely popular, but a handful of proper writers also read and apparently liked it, which was how I found myself with an offer to appear in and be photographed for a Sunday Times article about blogging. Finally, it felt like something I actually wanted was happening in my life. In hindsight, it is mind-boggling that I didn't realize by appearing in a national newspaper I was outing myself. But I didn't until the night the article came out, when I realized with a lurch of dread that almost every visitor to the blog in the past few years had my employer's IP address. And so she was made redundant. And she goes into some detail about being called into a manager's office, an array of HR people, they're all looking very serious and somber, and she was told she was being made redundant. And here in the UK, that typically means your position has been made redundant, you're out of a job. So that happened. She adds, I didn't try to find another legal job. My indiscretion had made me unemployable in the sector. This is back in 2008, by the way. Blogging has showed me that living could just possibly be writing. 12 years later, it turns out it is. I still cringe when I think about the sloppy idiocy of writing about work online, something any 16-year-old knows not to do. So I think nothing's really changed since Heather Armstrong and being deuced to Emma Beddington and being made redundant, all because of a blog that she had kept secret and they found out about it. And I'm just wondering if that had happened today, would the consequences have been the same? I.e., this was a secret blog. No one knew about it until an event that she started in a newspaper suddenly became visible. I would have thought it's impossible to keep secrets like this today, Shel. What do you reckon?
The thing that I can't help but thinking is that this is so quaint compared to what we were talking about earlier. Good heavens, if we could go back to blogging instead of mob tweeting and just talking to each other in the comments of a post, where the participants are genuinely interested in the topic and have read some background about it, that the world would be a better place. It could probably happen today, but it just sounds so benign compared to some of the consequences of the other things that we've been talking about.
We need to wind the clock back then, for 17, 18 years, back to the early days of this century.
I miss blogging.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I still got my blog.
I still have mine. I don't post to it.
No, I'm down to about once a month when I remember. But I'd like to do more, but there's too many other things to be concerned about, and the moments don't happen. So that was Emma Beddington. Good for you, Emma. I think you discovered writing as a result of this. So from your point of view, the outcome has been good. Your story's terrific. We also mentioned, didn't we, Shel, that in addition to Heather Armstrong, there was another great one of a lady called Ellen Simonetti, who was a flight attendant on Delta Airlines, who was fired because for what her supervisor called a misuse of the Delta uniform. She'd posted photos on her personal blog called Queen of the Sky. It's now called Diary of a Fired Flight Attendant. Pictures of herself in a uniform on an empty plane in rather, let's call them, risque poses. And she wrote a lot about the kind of slightly risque-oriented content in the blog. That was back then, and very few people knew about that blog. I would say it'd be almost impossible to keep that secret now. So,
I would think the likelihood of somebody getting fired for doing that these days is probably lower, as organizations are a little bit more savvy about the marketing potential that comes out of that. I mean, we have employee ambassadors now, and we didn't back then.
No, true. And I'm reminded when you mentioned employee ambassadors of also the employer can make a huge error. Which, what was it? That paint company in Florida about the guy?
That was not that long ago. Yeah,
it was recent. It was this year. We talked about it on the show, and so
he had a very popular TikTok account that showed him mixing different paints, and they fired him for it. But he got picked up by.
It was sort of secret, not secret, but it was not discovered until the employer found it and they fired him. You're right, and he was then picked up by a competitor. So things have changed, to be sure.
Yeah, I work with somebody who has a TikTok account and refuses to share the name on it. Doesn't want us to see it.
Oh dear. Well, it just shows. I mean, there were simpler times, and we can wax nostalgic about those days. But in the case of Emma Beddington, I like the
By the way,
story.
the
That
most
was
British name ever.
isn't it? Yeah, it was only published this week, so it's still a topic that a major national newspaper felt worthy of publishing the story. So
Yeah, and that
there
will
we have
draw
it.
to an end this episode of For Immediate Release, episode number 210. Our next episode we are planning to post on Monday, September 27th, late in the month, because that's the way our calendars rolled. We do hope that you will share your comments with us. Love to have conversations about what our listeners have to say. You can send email to fircomments@gmail.com, attach up to a 3-minute audio file. We'll play it. You can record that comment directly from the FIR website. There's a send voicemail tab on the right-hand side of the page. Click it, record up to 90 seconds. If you want to record more than that, make 2 of them. I can put them together in Adobe Audition. Leave a comment directly on the show notes for this episode at firpodcastnetwork.com. Share your thoughts on the FIR community on Facebook. And please leave us ratings or reviews on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And there's so many places these days, Google, Spotify, all of those places that are getting into this massive world of podcasting in which we were freaking pioneers, whether we're acknowledged for it or not. So until next month, that will be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.
Brilliant. Let me hit the stop button.
Yep, me too.
Done recording. Yep, saving.
Good. Oh, that was good.
That was great, Shel. Thanks very much. That was a good show. So I'll send you the what time is it here? 6:30. I'll send you imminently my recording, so you'll have that.
Great. I'm probably going to do most of the editing tomorrow, although I'll probably start today because I'm attending that funeral virtually.
Yeah.
They now live stream funeral services.
Oh boy. So what else can I tell you about? Yeah, I bought a new computer the other day. A Dell.
I think I saw you had a picture of it.
Yeah, I did. So that one, as soon as I opened it and turned it on, it had a fault on the panel, on the LCD panel. Yeah, a huge red striped vertical. So I called them, and I was impressed as hell with the response of the warranty people. So they agreed to replace it under warranty.